Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream podcast for the Polynesian Eyes podcast here. Going live on Facebook, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, X, or in Twitter. Hello, Mr. Atearoa. Masi, how are you and how is the day going for you?
Thank you, Tua. Doing pretty good. Friday here in New Zealand time. Getting dark pretty fast. It's only 5:30 and just barely light outside. Still a little bit cold. It's our kind of cold, windy, rainy season in New Zealand. But overall, it's good. It's Friday. Fridays are always good. But how you doing? How's your day?
Not bad. Friday for me tomorrow. Good day at work. Finished off at around 5 p.m. Been watching the RNC. Busy time.
Mm,
It's politics season here in the U.S. So was keeping an eye. Had an opportunity to see Uncle Donald
mm.
do his thing, and also just the convention overall. Any thoughts, Musty? Were you able to catch any of the convention, and what's kind of your initial thoughts there?
I've been watching the RNC and working at the same time, but I've watched all most of the speeches and I'm currently up to Donald Trump. I just barely finished Dana White's
Hmm.
speech. So overall, the talks were really good. I really enjoyed Vivek's speech. I also enjoyed Hulk Hogan's speech, the entertainment and stuff. I really enjoyed that, and I think those are the only two. I did enjoy the speeches from um, what is it? Some of the fallen militaries, the 13 families who did come
In
and
Afghanistan withdrawal,
yeah, Afghanistan withdraw and explain
really
their
sad.
stories. How yeah, they haven't been even acknowledged by the current administration. So that one was powerful. I enjoyed a different view because this convention was a bit different. With they had what's that like model girl Amber Rose and had a different kind of twist, and that is a good sign of the party. At least our view and perspectives are being taken into to a certain demographic and a certain uh, people that have different parties that have been voting another party maybe all their lives, and she's gonna be a big help because she's a big influence in that world.
On
So
social
it's
media.
social media. So some good stuff. Good stuff to see where the party's heading
No,
to.
no, 100%. It is not your grandpa's convention, right? Your Republican
Mm,
convention. That was one of the things that really caught my attention. It's a lot more entertaining. It's a lot more inspiring.
mm,
It seems a lot of new talent and new potential leaders, like you said, Vivek. A lot of young people speaking. Definitely, people speaking that are not from the typical
yes.
old school Republican.
Yes.
We had your evangelical Christian speakers as
Mm,
well, but like you were saying, they brought in a bunch of those college guys that protected the flag. You
yes.
brought in
Oh,
Kid
that one was good.
Rock,
Yeah.
and so yeah, a lot of different types of people. It's going to be definitely an interesting season. Hey, Javier,
Hello,
welcome
Javier.
back. Good to see you
Dua, how
again
about
here, Togo.
Dua? How about that other one I forgot to mention that I enjoyed, that union leader boss, Teamsters. That was an interesting talk, and
In very interesting.
he did open my eyes on, yes, the workers are creating that union because I've always thought that bad, but then he's also kind of giving me an understanding on multi-corporate, like the corporate big companies. They do their own kind of union thing to kind of that's not good because like he did bring up a certain phrase that was very powerful, that these multi-corporate organizations that are super like mega big, they, they
Yeah,
they don't have a reliant on any nation. And he brought a good point. It's all for just the company because they can reside anywhere, and that's
yep,
why. And those are the companies I believe are pushing this globalism around the
yep.
world. So
No,
that was an interesting
100.
take.
No, and that is, and I think unfortunately, conservatists kind of empowered the business sector to be like that, right?
Mm,
Where we've kind of just let them, we just free trade, blah, blah, blah. But really, we grew some monsters that now all of a sudden you start
mm,
to see that the union, hey, may have a point, right?
yeah.
These like Amazon's like the 11th. If it was its own country, the 11th largest
Yeah.
economy in the world,
Mm,
right? Like, I mean, that these are we have to start thinking there needs to be a shift in the way we approach business organizations. I mean, it's credit. It's a sign of how much we've progressed as
mm,
human beings, right? That we can have entities that are not governments that or religions, right? Because usually those were the two big
mm,
entities. Government and religion were the two powers that were that's why a lot of people say, separation of government
mm.
and church. But now we're looking at businesses basically being another power structure
Yeah.
that we have to figure out how to interact with and get under control. Because, like you said, the Teamsters union president made a very powerful point. Like,
Mm,
these entities are basically nations, and they don't
yeah.
have loyalty to America, right?
No.
They
No.
have
Yeah.
loyalty to their own stuff. I mean, it's very interesting. That
Mm,
was what made this convention very interesting. New
yes.
ideas, speakers from areas that I mean, I can't ever remember a major union president speaking at a GOP
Convention.
convention,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm.
So, yeah, very interesting. And then, Uncle Donald got up there in 90 minutes, man, with a part of his ear missing. He's up there for 90 minutes.
Ah,
So,
he's a
pretty,
kill. He's
pretty
like the
intense.
killer instinct, man.
Hey, and I don't know if a lot of people on the viewers and the listeners, a lot of rumors going on that Sleepy Joe is going to pull out. I even
But
saw on Newsmax they're already reporting. They're
yeah,
already reporting that
yeah. They
Joe
said,
Biden's pulled out.
"Oh yes, yes, I did see that that article, and there's some other news outlets who are even referencing that by the end of the weekend it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Like it's
and
close.
and you know what's crazy? You can't help but think now that the assassination attempt failed,
Didn't work.
right? That was like maybe the last ditch effort to save Sleepy Joe. But now that that's not going on, they know for a fact now it's like we got to do something different since
Mm,
that failed. Which the whole I don't know if any of the viewers are following that assassination attempt is getting weirder and weirder and weirder. The more information comes out, they're showing videos of the shooter 30 minutes before just walking around the building, right? They're saying that over an hour earlier, the threat was identified.
mm,
They were there. The building that the shooter was on top of was the staging location for the counter sniper, right? For
mm,
certain things. I mean, they're just, and then what, 2 minutes before the shots were taken, people were yelling, there's a guy
yeah,
on the roof with, I mean, there's just crazy,
yeah.
crazy stuff. Like, there's just
Yeah.
a lot of questions.
The only one I heard was kind of funky that there was a police officer who did climb up
Hmm.
just maybe a couple minutes, and then the rifle was pointed at him, and he didn't have his gun on him or whatever, and then he went back down, and then the shots went after that. It was just
Yeah.
weird. I was like, why is a police officer not having his gun with him could take away the threat right then and there? I don't know. It was weird.
Well, and then once he goes up there and the guy turns the gun on him, why in the world aren't there
You,
calls? Get
yeah,
him down, get him out. There's a guy with the gun. I mean,
yeah,
fishy,
very
fishy,
fishy,
fishy.
very fishy. And I do hope that when I don't know, to be honest, because of the current administration and how the justices work right now, we probably won't find an answer until next year to what really happened. I feel like this could be dragged out and until Trump gets in to kind of clean up house and figure out the truth. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, very, very interesting. I mean, here's a comment right here. Let it be a color shooter. Yep. Yeah, let it be a color shooter. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of interesting things going on, and we'll have to see how everything plays out. I will say this, man. It just wasn't Uncle Donald's time, man, because
mm,
literally from the moment they did the analysis, from the moment the guy pulled the trigger
Yeah.
to when Uncle Donald turned his head,
Yep.
he had to turn his head right as the shot happened, right? And if he didn't turn his head, the perfect kill shot apparently is in the back of the head, and Uncle Donald would have been done for.
Jeez.
um, you know what, Mussy? I want to talk about some of your experience with the Polynesian youth, and I did
Mm,
come across a video that's somewhat related to it, and I wanted to get your thoughts, kind of like an intro
mm.
to it.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
And I'll show you the video, and then it's I seen this guy before, and he was talking. I think he lived in Tonga for a while.
Oh yes,
Um,
he lived in Tonga. I think he started off with serving his mission in Tonga. But before that, I know Cameron. I know this guy pretty well. He was like a year or two younger than me. We went to school at Provo High School, and
oh, he's
yeah,
from Provo. Oh, you know
yeah,
him, Mussy?
yeah, yeah. I know him. I know him. And then hey, Malo Clyde Moore.
Clyde Moore, Malo Lere, man. Welcome to the digital Kava session.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I mean, I heard him talking about the story, and I didn't know you knew him, Mussy.
Yes. So Provo, and then he went on his mission to Tonga, and then I think he went to like BYU Hawaii. He's got in contact with that. He's gotten interested in Tongan history
Okay.
and Polynesian history and Tonga history, and then I think he went back to Wavau and specifically to kind of stay there and do some business ventures and stuff, and he came back to America, and that's kind of the last thing I've kind of
Hmm.
know about him. So, and then he finished from BYU, and then maybe he's in Utah or somewhere. But yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's jump into this video here because he does give a discussion on Polynesian youth. Oh yeah, way. What up, Bears, man? That's what you were supposed to bring. That's what you were supposed to bring, Toko. Yeah, way. But yeah, let's listen to what he has here about a statistic he shares, and go from there.
So I don't know how if people are very aware of this, but suicide is a big problem in the Pacific.
Yep.
I think Pacific Island youth, be it, I'm not quite sure if it's in the Pacific or just diasporically, have 3 times the suicide rate of the world average.
Wow.
And so when I was in, and so that's just a small part of it too, because those are the kids who like it gets bad enough to kill themselves, but that doesn't include all the kids who are so bored or have nothing to do that they drink and go crash into a tree, driving 80 miles an hour, which happened all the time. Christmas Day, my first area, I think five kids died in Tomololo. One of them, I actually knew his younger brother. And that was everywhere. Like everywhere I went, we attended funerals of young men.
Wow.
Because they had either committed suicide, gotten in a fight. So I don't know.
What are your thoughts on that, Masi? Has that been what you've observed, your experience? Just wanted to see. That was interesting. That's my first time hearing that kind of statistic on Polynesian youth.
Yes. See, he kind of brought up with Tonga. Growing up in Tonga, I didn't know what suicide was. I don't know if it's gotten bad as of recent, but I don't know if Tonga. I've always thought Tonga it wasn't that bad. Maybe because we're in our area, or maybe in certain areas in town or
Yeah, I
outside.
mean,
I don't know. I don't know. That's what's your experience. Me growing up, I never heard of suicide. I didn't hear.
I heard of it was like it was big news when that happened, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
Tanakita, and I don't remember it being so pervasive, but I mean, for a small population, you have a couple people do it. Yeah, you know what I mean? You played the percentages. That's why I'm like, maybe that's true. But what I did notice, which is kind of weird, and it always happened in Tonga, whenever one kid did it, you would get like 2 or 3 or 4 more that would be short. It would be like all lumped together, and then all of a sudden, then you would never hear about it, right? And then
Mm,
it'll be a few years. It's like that's the only observation I can kind of give. But once again, I was a little kid. I wasn't paying
mm,
attention to what was going on, really. You know what I mean?
mm,
But I just
mm.
don't remember it being such a big problem. But I don't know if because he makes it sound like it is in Tonga, but that wasn't my experience. But I
Yeah,
left Tonga in 2002, 2001. So
yeah,
not
yeah.
2000, 2001. So
2000. We came. Yeah, we
things
left
things could
2002.
have changed significantly since we left.
Mm, yeah, I mean, even when I went back to Tonga 2019, I didn't hear it as it being a thing, but I do know in Hawaii it's an issue for
Mm.
Polynesian youth. It was an issue, especially in our kind of area in the North Shore side, was an issue, and New Zealand, same thing. It's an issue amongst young people, and to me, a big contribution to that is probably the 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 tough financial life that many Pacific people kind of go through when you
Mm.
immigrate. Different culture, different way of doing things. Mom and dad are probably working multiple jobs at the same time. Those multiple jobs are happening. They're still doing their Tongan duties of fatongia and their responsibilities in church, their
In New
responsibilities to
Zealand
their
and in Tonga, double
yes,
whammy now.
yes, same thing in Hawaii, kind of all these. So when you get all of these things, and this is the funny thing I always say, I know many of our people go overseas for that opportunity, but once they get over here, I don't think they really understand because they've already made the sacrifice to get here. I love it. Really opens their eye how difficult it is to how the expense to pay for your house now, the expensive to get your kids school uniforms and everything,
Mhm.
and then not only that, then when you're seen as overseas, the amount of and it could be maybe your families wherever they may be in the islands because you know where you came from. A lot of people are moving away because they want a more materialistic, better life for their family, and then they have that self pressure to try to provide, and that trickles down to the kids. Probably there's some social dynamics that are affecting the kids and stuff, and a lot of the kids are probably put pressure to do well and perform well and get caught up in some wrong friends or some bad habits, and you get to a very self-depressing stage. And I know in New Zealand the Polynesian population, especially the Tongan Samoans, very very young. I think the average is like 23 years old, 21, like,
Wow.
so it's a very young population still trying to navigate the complexities of moving away and your family still trying to integrate to their society. So I know it's a huge issue, especially. See, I don't know. See, that's the first time for me here in the islands that I thought it was an issue. I didn't, where we grew up in Mu'a and even some of the Hage side. I did. It was a rare thing. I didn't hear it too much in school too. So unless it's changed, but yeah, that's kind of my insights to that.
No,
Well,
100%. Couple comments here to catch up, Mussy, before we kind of continue. Mo said Trump had too much Kava. Worst speech ever.
oh,
I kind of know what you're meaning a little bit, Mo, because it wasn't Trump's typical energy, but I still enjoyed it. But it wasn't his typical energy. He kind of had to build up into it because you could tell he was kind of emotional for the
yeah,
typical Trump.
yeah.
I guess almost getting assassinated and having your ear shot
Well, he
off
Trump.
can have
Yes.
that impact.
Well, Trump did also let everyone know that his speech was not the same, and he just changed instantly what he was gonna say. So that's probably played a,
Yeah.
a big big part of
Yeah,
it.
that's what Mo's mentioning. Yeah, I agree. Can't argue with that, but I still enjoyed it just because it was just great to hear from him, just to know the guy's still alive, still fighting. A
Mm,
couple comments here that's interesting because you were mentioning the financial burden, Masi. So theoretically, from a financial perspective, if we take away from Tonga in Tonga, or if we take away the money away from Tonga and Tonga, can the people in Tonga? No, no, the Tongan economy will collapse. is my latest understanding. I'll give this response and then I'll look up the trade deficit, Mussy, while you give your thoughts.
Mm,
But
mm,
right now, if the remittances do not go to Tonga, because Tonga has such a huge trade deficit, we import way more than we export, the Tongan economy will literally belly up and fall apart. That's my understanding. And I think that's what you're referencing for to Javier. But Mussy,
mm.
any thoughts of that while I look up the Tonga trade deficit?
Yeah. To me personally, I do still think the people can still survive. The thing is, the materialistically, electricity, like the whole economy, will probably won't be able to survive. But I think the people in Tonga will still survive. I think the perfect.
Yes.
I did speak, not speak. Did talk with Danny. He did mention during the whole pandemic that was Tonga was shutting down its whole country. He said more people were actually going to their farms and farming their land because money was not the same. Families overseas was struggling to send money, so actually a lot of people went back to like their lands and kind of farming for food. But yeah, that's if yeah, it's the money
I
and stuff is
yeah.
more of your having all the good stuff, all the materialistic stuff, and improving the lives of their family. But yeah, and economic wise, I don't know if Tonga would survive. Yeah, with the without
Yeah, and that's what
assistance.
I mean. That's what I meant earlier. Mussy, I
Mm,
appreciate the clarification.
mm,
Is financially and economically it won't survive, but in
mm,
regards to people, they'll survive because you just that's one of the beauties of Tonga
mm.
is there's always gonna be Pele, there's always gonna be Hopa and Pata. Like the people aren't gonna
Mandioke
starve.
is everywhere.
Yes,
Everyone.
exactly. What we're kind of speaking is that the economy itself in regards
Yes.
to foreign goods and foreign assets coming in and being able to purchase those imported goods. As you can see here in 2022, Tonga's trade deficit was estimated to be 230 million.
Mm,
So with
mm.
with exports only
Only 14.
14 million. So
Yeah.
basically 215 million bucks is how much money Tongans are sending to Tonga to balance out that budget or that
Yeah.
trade deficit. That's how critical, which goes back to what you're saying. This is that maybe that added pressure, right?
Mm,
Is
mm.
because really a lot of the financial or purchasing power is funded by Tongans overseas.
Yeah. 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 No,
So
and that's a good insight too. That's why government in Tonga needs to make things easier for people to create some innovation and to be more productive. I think that's another thing. Productivity in Tonga can really be improved if government would just stay away and listen to the
yeah,
king. For heaven's sakes, don't touch the private sector. Let the private sector
figure
kind
it
of run
out.
it and figure it out, and just maybe do a partnership instead of creating these laws and old laws to try to enforce them that is irrelevant to today.
No, and 100%. And I mean, once again, I don't want to beat the Starlink thing to death, but if you can't figure out internet connectivity, that's the one thing that could potentially have a huge difference. I mean, you could be a digital assistant right in Tonga
Mm,
getting paid.
mm.
And as we mentioned, there are certain people living in Tonga who are able to work remotely in Tonga getting paid foreign salaries because
Yes.
of the reliable internet that Starlink is able to provide.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some interesting stuff here. Another comment. Dwayne said, hey, welcome to the digital Kava
Mm.
session. Maybe in general, especially these days, if it is a problem, the advent of the internet and the generalized degradation of our cultures play a part in that. Mental illness has skyrocketed. That's, I think, globally, right? That's a
Mm.
global problem that's definitely happened. I guess, a good question to ask. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but the male versus female suicide rate amongst
Mm.
Polynesians, because I know in the West, males are suffering at a higher rate of suicide than females in general, and it's getting higher and higher. Um, so any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yeah. No, that's another thing I've noticed in Tonga too. You know, a lot more, and that's probably what's driving a lot of the suicide. A lot more youth are having their own phones. You know, they're getting, probably into multiple um, information that's coming in a fast pace. All these trends, and they're, we all know when you're a teenager, and then especially if you're a teenager in Tonga that hasn't probably gone overseas. You get caught up in certain things. You probably get a lot more experimental. Just all these kind of things. The same like every other youth that's going through in all the countries. Parents, just knowing Tongan parents, they don't know what their kid is really up to doing, but they have a phone, and you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
that's another thing, and probably that's the difference between what Cameron was sharing to what we grew up with. There was really no community. No, the only when we were in Tonga, we were still having the telephone in your house. That one phone, our
yeah.
neighbors would come to our house, do their calls there. But now everyone, even kids, are having cell phones. So I think that's another contribution to the decline of your
And
the
I could
decline of
be,
people's ability to kind of navigate that.
man, yeah, I would love to get more, because more information and more detail, because I don't hear a ton of it in Tonga, but I do hear a lot of it more in the Polynesians overseas. And
Yes.
and I think, I mean, my gut is telling me all the things you mentioned earlier, Masi, that is uniquely Polynesian, right? All the pressures that are uniquely Polynesian on top of the Western world's problems of the
Sure.
internet and the expectation.
Mm,
So it's almost like a double whammy, right? And
mm,
and and, and as we discussed, one of the lo- every culture has a positive and negative, the strength and weakness. One of the
mm,
weaknesses of our traditional culture is sometimes the communication up, and that the communication top down sometimes is a challenge, but especially down up is definitely a big challenge. And so just think of it as all the uniquely cultural challenges, then you add Western challenges on top of that, where it's
mm,
the Western education, which is heavily geared towards a certain type of way of thinking. A lot of our people
mm,
are hands-on learning, right?
mm.
And Western is way more, study and repetition of thought rather than hands-on work.
And another person that would probably be good that I have network with, and it's more this person is a very up to date with the current trends with youth mental health. He's a psychologist related to my wife's family. His name is Alo Foriaki. He even mentioned just some of the stuff that the Polynesian youth that kind of go through here in New Zealand, and what he also went through. He even mentioned it to me, like, man, you know what? It's so much better if I just stayed in Tonga and just be a high school teacher or a principal, and would have been happy just doing that. And I don't think a lot of people understand that when people make that move and they've already sacrificed a lot, that it is tough to try to make things work. And when you do make it work, it's good when you want the
Yes.
material things, but some people when you see the material things and they have it and they're like, is it really worth it to go all through all of that? And he just said, and he's a well-known psychologist, youth uh, uh, person that kind of understands what the youth Polynesian youth go through, and he even mentioned that. So
No,
yeah.
and this is my observation. I think our people need to have a little bit of a better understanding. This is something I usually speak with some of my project managers. Managing expectation is an important part of being successful and preparing your mind, right? Like usually I tell my project managers is like, everybody wants to pay $1 but get $1 million product. And so you
Mm,
have to manage that expectation is, hey, you're paying us $1. You have to manage the customer and say, you're going to get $1. And if I can give you $1.02, okay, then great. But managing that expectation, this is what I'm trying to get to, Masi. When you make that huge jump from Tonga to to a foreign country, it is a generational investment. You are not going to see those major returns for, like, if you're lucky, within 2 generations,
Mm,
right? But more, you're looking at 3 or 4 generations before you see the return, because you're coming in, you're in a foreign land, you don't know the landscape, you don't have a ton of relationships. Now, it's changing a little bit in certain places because now that there's more critical mass of Tongans and Polynesians in certain areas, you can maybe speed up the progress. But in general, when you make that jump, it's a multi-generational investment, where the first and second generation are just trying to stay afloat, and then
correct.
hopefully
Yeah.
the third or fourth generation, because they're more familiar with the landscape, that's now their home, they're
Mm,
familiar with, they can possibly make a change. But sometimes our brothers and sisters, they make this change, and they, I don't know if it's just the observation on Hollywood and thinking like, oh, I'm just going to show up and then it's just going to happen.
mm,
That's just not a very realistic perspective. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Mussy.
mm. No, no, it's a huge jump, and it's a huge sacrifice, and it can be detrimental to many of the youth. Like, someone can go through a very poor mental health journey, and it could take away their life, and maybe not knowing, because like you said, speaking from the bottom up is not, it's really, kids don't really have a voice, especially if you are come from a two-tonguing parent home, unless you have understanding parents. So I'm just saying, in general, it's really hard to kind of get that communication. It's always more top to bottom, and even with the top to bottom, I
It's
mean,
not
most
very
most
successful in that communication either.
yes, yes, because most Polynesian parents, it's more, you watch me do this, so I expect you to do this kind of thing, instead of the verbal communication. Do it this way, do it this way. But I'm just knowing.
Yeah,
I'm just doing with. I'm just thinking of my time with dad. Just most of dad's communication was more, you watch him
doing.
kind of do it, and do it this way, and then you follow. Kind of thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's the thing. The verbal communication is not a it's not a thing amongst our culture, to kind of thing, especially like a fam within the family. It's more, do it this way, and like, it's an expectation you follow it because I've been doing it this way,
yeah.
kind of thing.
No, and that's the typical, like, scolding you get, right? When you do something that you're not supposed to do. It's just, have you ever seen me do that? Why would you do that when you never seen me do that, right? Because
Yeah.
that is, a like you said, the primary mode of communication is by action and observation.
Mm,
Um, a couple comments here, because I do appreciate everyone's comments here, and I do want to come back to it. Here's from Javier. I wish there's an organization that can teach people how to utilize Airbnb for the tourist season. Man, I think there's
internet.
so much that Tonga can do. So much that Tonga can
Mm,
do, but it's just, there's two problems that I see. Number one, they think they have to give the stereotypical Hawaii experience, like the commercialized paradise. That's why I really like the true Polynesia, or the true Tonga advertising that Tonga did. I was like,
mm,
that's the right way to think,
mm,
is leverage what's unique to Tonga. It doesn't have to be a 5-star hotel and white sands. You could build a really nice Tongan pare with just, concrete floor, some good, just, it just has to be clean and organized. It doesn't have to be, Marriott, type level, but then, and then do an Airbnb kind of thing where you could have,
mm,
you're selling a unique experience, but it takes some leadership with some creativity. And honestly, that's one of the biggest things I see lacking back home.
mm,
Leadership with vision.
mm.
I don't know. That's kind of my response to that. Mussy, any
I'll
thoughts
just
on that?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. And here's another reason why we can. And the thing is, too, I think we can give that white sandy beach, but even better than Hawaii and Hawaii. Hawaii has one of the pristine white beaches. The reason why it's hard to get there, Tonga government has a hard time just maintaining domestic flights that is reliable, because many
Yeah.
people just fly into Tongatapu or just stay there. They don't really have the opportunity to really experience the outer islands, because you either go by boat, which is not comfortable for tourists who only have a week or 2 weeks to stay, and two, the domestic airlines, they're not reliable. They're always off and on. And this is the funny thing with the Tonga government. I don't know this current administration. I don't know why they're trying to touch other things. If they can just maintain the bare minimum of just essential services, like keeping the domestic airline going, so that we can get tourists to experience the greater wide country of Tonga. And Hawaii is from there's an article that's considered that Hawaii is one of the top 10 beaches in the world.
Yeah.
That one
I think
person.
on like tourist.com, they rated
Yes,
Hawaii like the number
yes,
3 place to visit like a couple years ago.
yes. And if we had reliable services like that, more people will be able to experience that. And not only that, we'll have big companies, even like Marriott, if they know structures were reliable, I think they would put money, because if you're a top three, top five in the world for a certain location, I'm sure they would make money if they had a reliable. The thing is, the government of Tonga have never been reliable with their structure, and that's part of the
No, my
yeah. So
issue, Mussy, is you know, Marriott will have to get a license first. They cannot build because we have to keep the law. We won't allow them to build unless they have a proper license.
yeah, yeah. No, and that's yes, and that's the funny thing is like I don't know why government is, dude, just do the the basic services and master that before you want to touch things like a Starlink or anything else, because dude, the the
Just
the,
don't
the
get in the
domestic
way.
air the domestic airline under this current administration has been horrendous.
Well, and that's why it's
Horrendous.
it's funny that you bring that up because this is what I just saw the article on something online the other day, and they said that, and I don't know who this Chatham is. Is that like a New Zealand or
New
Australian?
Zealand. Nope,
New
New
Zealand?
Zealand. There's a Chatham Islands close to New Zealand here that they fly back and forth.
Yeah. So apparently they're now stepping into Tonga because the Lulutai, look at here, hydraulics malfunction, no brakes, disabled flight recorder. Air
Yeah,
safety investigators described last flight of Lulutai A3 PUA hydraulics complications occurred mid flight before the Lulutai Airlines Saab 34OB lost control while taxiing after landing at Fuamotu with a full load of passengers in December of last year. I mean,
yeah,
it's a hazard. Like how are you going to get people to be coming in feeling comfortable to go to
yeah,
Hawaii and take advantage of those
yeah,
things like you're mentioning?
yeah.
Um, Here's another comment here. Was going to bring this up. They should teach the kids coding like they do in India. I would. I think that was like 10 years ago, Mo, with AI.
Mhm. That's the
The
future.
AI is going to write the code. What we need is creativity and vision to, and obviously internet. We're gonna
Mhm.
need, because AI is gonna write the code for you. As it's about good ideas and vision, and
Mhm.
and asking AI. This is a, and when AI gets into what it's doing, it's gonna be who can be creative with their ideas, right? Because you're going to be able to tell AI, hey, I want you to write me the code to
Correct.
run this app and run that, and AI is going to do all that work for you. So it's going to be a lot of creativity, and like you said right here, a lot of kids are smart in math, and teach them computer science, teaching them to be creative, how to use their skills in math and computer science, um, to be creative. And then to your last comment here, Mo, so they can work online from Tonga, but you need reliable internet.
Mm.
And that's something we are definitely far behind.
Mm.
Let's
Another thing I
see
was thinking,
here.
another thing I was thinking that Tonga, that especially the schools can do. I don't know if all schools, but I think all schools should be mandatory teach all kids to take like an agricultural class too.
Yeah.
I think because every family has some land that a lot of them sit vacant, and bush, weeds and stuff. So I think every student should take an agricultural class. That should be a mandatory for private religious run institution like high schools and government schools. That should be. I know Toloa is one of the few schools that run it, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about Tonga High. Everyone should be mandatory take an agriculture class.
No,
So
100%. And it becomes even more valuable when purchasing power goes up. Didn't I
yes,
hear somewhere that like one ufi was like 300 or 400 bucks or something ridiculous? And we're not talking
yes,
about the 6 foot ones. We're
no, no,
talking like the
just a
standard
regular.
normal ones.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
because
coming back to
they're
what you're saying,
yes. No, then the farmers are well off whoever can grow that. But if everyone can have that knowledge of at least growing, that's an option, because the
mm,
more Tonga is able to export and people are wanting more Tongan products, especially Tongan watermelon, Tongan ufi, even Tongan manioc, it's people are willing to buy, and that would help the farmers and growers in Tonga. And you don't have to have a big farm. If you can have a good plot of land, you can still make a good living.
yeah. Lot of interesting things. Lot of interesting things. Here's another comment. Being creative is the best defense mechanism against depression and anything that will lead them to be. Yes, and that's, I mean, there's, Jordan Peterson and these guys just talk about, especially for like males, it's lack of purpose,
Mm,
right? Lack of purpose of, the Western world has basically deemed anything masculine as toxic, and so it kind of removes responsibility. And I think purpose, and maybe that's some of the challenges that our youth have when they're making the transition into a new environment where, like you mentioned earlier, Masi, mom and dad are working 2 jobs just to kind of stay afloat, help with the financial responsibilities, but then the kids are stuck in the middle and have all the demands of
mm,
mom and dad's understanding of the traditional culture and how to communicate and how to behave, but then the environment they're in is totally
mm,
foreign to that way of thinking, and so they don't see where they fit into society, and then lose purpose or get involved with the wrong group. I don't know,
mm,
that's just kind of my rambling thought there.
mm, mm. No, and a big reason of the suicide. People are feeling, especially the Polynesian youth, suicidal. A lot of them, just the kids feel like they're being neglected, but
Mhm.
parents are just trying to do their best to provide, but so when you're a youth, you need some kind of attention to know that what you're being nurtured, you're being taught, because you're in a different environment, because you're seeing your friends being nurtured in a different way, kind of thing. So I mean, that also be a contribution to that.
Yes. Oh yeah, we ato e fuipu fonu ki a nacho business, eh?
Maria Nacho.
Yeah, just don't spill it. Eh? Oh, I mahua Nacho inuge oshi eh. Atu ia kakoe malo. There we go. Cheers, Nacho. That one was for you. Yeah, good comment here from Clyde Moore Tongas. The leadership needs to get up with the times. Our people are still in a limbo and haven't adjusted to these. I agree, and we need the proper leadership. I feel like our leadership is still thinking in the old school, like, we just sit here and everything's just gonna happen. This reminds me of we were at like a family event or something, and the OGs, how you go to a putu or something, and the olden days, like the OGs just sit down and give out the directions. They just sit there, do their thing, they drink their kava. When it's time to do something, they come out, they just give direction.
Mm,
And I think we spoke with Maka on
mm,
our guest when Maka joined us.
mm,
He was mentioning how, especially when he was in LA, the youth wanted to go sit down with the OGs
mm,
and fight Kava and listen to them, but then the OGs would like chase them, right? Tell them, hey, Moalu, go
mm,
away, you little kids. And then what happened is the little kids went and they go and became gangsters and stuff.
mm,
And then all of a sudden the OGs were like, oh, it's better that the kids come and hang out with us
Mm.
even though in
Then
the
let them
Kava, then
go
let them
and
go and
do
become
whatever.
gangsters. So
The street will eat you up alive and spit you
yeah,
back out,
yeah, and you'll be
and
lucky
you're
if
gonna
it
be the
spits
worst
you
thing.
back out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
either dead
So
or you've been prison.
yeah, malo malo nacho. Cheers. Hey, what a bears. I don't know. Maybe it's good you didn't bring the toa if that's your expectation right there. See, yeah.
She que algo fai kama fe iya. What a burst. Tala mai ka
Ay.
pu ge u fai me pe he ma shi.
Hey, welcome here, Eva 9 or Eva Hiva. I don't know how you say
Mm.
that, but yes, very
Oh.
interesting. Very interesting. President Trump and the era we're in. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the discussion there. Some interesting things that with the Polynesian youth. I think
Mm.
I don't know. I didn't realize it was that big of a challenge.
Uh, it could be. I mean, it could be now in Tonga that phones and being accessible, and you don't get the best things that come out of social media telling you to do certain things or think less of yourself if you're not doing something. So, you know, it could be a thing now since different from when we were there.
Yes, just some comments here. What a man is on the wrong website. Marie. Yahweh is yep. Our Kalapus part in Oregon. Our mission is to bring our youth and guide them through the transition. As no, that is a really, I think it's an essential thing because, like we talked about earlier, it was a huge advantage when you didn't have so many ideas competing for the youth that the communication was just one way, and it was a big advantage because we quickly align, right? We can move quickly when it's one directional communication, but when it comes to more voices than just your voice, then bringing the youth in closer and having dialogue goes a really long way. So that's really awesome that's what you
Mm,
guys do over there in Oregon
Oregon.
at the Kalapu Spartan there.
Mm.
So any other thoughts on that, Mussy, on just kind of like the youth and maybe not even just um suicide, but just challenges in general from your observation,
Mm.
maybe any ideas or kind of what you see, just any kind of thoughts in general there, Mussy.
Um. No, I mean, and of course, parents need to make sure that the communication has been. And here's the funny thing that's probably affecting also the family unit, Dua. So usually, when I used to be a social worker for a social provider here in New Zealand, remember when you there's a Tongan family that moved here to New Zealand from Tonga. I think it was a lottery pick or whatever. They usually do those things in Tonga. You get the lottery, and if you get picked, you get like residency to go to New Zealand. This family came. They applied for social housing. That's pretty popular in New Zealand. And when you get this social housing, you get prioritized depending on, if you're a single mom with how many kids and
Mm.
stuff. But there's been many times families come, they're married, and remember, when you're married, you're not a high priority to get social housing or and to get as much income.
Once again,
So
yeah.
so you get it's sad, but you get two parents that will apply for these housing. Then you get the mom who's saying she's single, even though they were married in Tonga. They come, she gets the nice big house, and they get a good inflow of government benefits and assistance come to them. And then when they usually do these checks, you one time I came to a one time I came, they thought I was a government housing check. The husband ran from the house to the car to go and hide because they thought I was the government checks. But when you see certain types behaviors like that, and then you see the kids doing that, what do you think the 8 kids are gonna see that you can this is a good behavior to do in order to get stuff from the government, and then it becomes a generational thing. Then if you see parents like that living that way, then what do you think
What are
the
you
social
reinforcing?
issues? Yes, then you allow all these social issues happening to these 8 kids to think it's okay, and then it's
That's the
okay to see
norm.
mom and dad to live this kind of life. When somebody comes, dad has to run and hide and pretend that the mom is single, kind of stuff.
See,
So
and
those are
yeah,
certain things that is probably the underlying and probably big factors to a lot of the social issues that's happening when these families come from Tonga and they figure out, oh, do these I get more when the government says that I don't have a husband or whatever. But it's a negative thinking, and it's a negative impact on the kids' minds when they grow up.
no, 100%. And that, we talked about the generational investment to really progress and achieve some of the long-term goals. When you get into the situation you're talking about, that's a cycle that
Mm,
if you do it right, maybe in 2 generations, but if you do it the way you're describing, you're never going to get out of that cycle at that
yeah,
point, right?
yeah,
Because this is why the government is not don't rely on the government to come and save you, because they're incentivized to keep you dependent on the government, so you vote for them. And
correct. They have more
that's
influence on you.
yeah.
You're like a puppet, whatever they want you. The greatest enemy to the government is a person that is independent that can't be moved.
Yep. And that's a big challenge. And it's
Mm.
we definitely have to. It's hard, and it's like they
Tua,
say,
it's
easier said than done, but it's
yes,
hard.
and no, and that's the thing. This this social housing is a big thing in New Zealand, and it's good to have it unlimited, but don't be 20 years living on social housing. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. That's not what government is for. But to get help when you need it is fine, but try your best to try to get away from it. But
Yeah.
yeah, because to me, if you're coming from Tonga to be like that, it's like, man, to me, I think Tonga is better because you're not being told what to do and how to live. It's just purely just the want, or they want to have more material things and all these, but material things in the expense of your freedom. I don't know if that's worth it, but some people think it is.
No, 100%. And that's I hope we don't get stuck in that cycle as a people, because we see other groups get stuck in that cycle, and multi-generational, right?
Mm,
Where it's, grandparents, parents, grandchildren, and even sometimes great grandchildren all in the same project area, right?
yeah.
And it's tough. It's really tough. Really hard to break out of that. Shoot, let's see. I think we kind of ran that
Mm.
topic down. Anything else, Mussy, on
Nah,
that?
good, good with that.
Let's go back to some of the comments here, just in case that leads to um hey, welcome, Surfer T. I always tell the homies there's your drinking buddies, smoking buddies, but nothing lasts as long as your Faikava Kalapu click. That has a lot, and that's one of the
Mm,
things that I'm kind of sitting there and I'm observing this phenomenon, you want to call it, with the youth, right? And the Kava that's coming up. I'm hopeful that it'll overall have a positive, like you're saying, Surfer T. I think it will. Um, because as long as you have a consistent group, it's really healthy for the mental health, right? To have a consistent group that you meet with and hang out with. And hopefully these Kalapu groups don't be the type of Kalapu groups that cause trouble, but are a good group to just kind of come, hang out, share similar stories, build some relationships, and then go back home to the
mm,
family. But
mm,
very, very interesting point there. Um, yeah, 100% looking like Javier here saying, true Surfer T is right. The Kalapu Brotherhood. I think there's a lot of positives. Looks like Surfer T is a libertarian. Marie, Peter Thiel, and I think Elon Musk is probably like a libertarian overall.
mm.
Um, yeah, that's what we were mentioning earlier, Clyde Moore. Times have changed. It's hard to maintain the normal life offshore, let alone, and that's the thing. It's you know that's an interesting thing to kind of discuss here, right? Because
Mm.
I don't know. I've heard this. I think it was Nina who brought this up, that like some of the Palangi wards are like, oh, they want the Polynesian wards to integrate with the Palangi wards because they see all the Tongan and especially the Tongan wards, right? I mean, let's just be straightforward. I mean, the
Mm,
majority of the stakes are Tongan, but they see the Polynesian wards and stuff doing all the activities and stuff, and they say they want to have that more in their wards.
mm,
And kind of going along with Clyde Moore's topic here, it's kind of like this fine balance, because if we're here in this Western world, it has its demands, and if we just totally disregard some of the challenges or commitments of our culture, it sometimes is to alleviate some of that stress. But at the same time, if you don't hold on and engage in the culture, you can lose some of the great benefits of the culture. So it's kind of I don't
mm,
know whether you want to call it a catch 22 or a balancing act. I don't
mm.
know, that can be a challenge. And I think that's where the challenge is being wise, right? And being wise and knowing when to engage and when
Yeah,
to engage. What are the most important things? I don't know.
yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
No, I think the culture has a lot more benefits. To be honest, there's a lot of benefits to it than some of the negative sides. Because the way, like you said, to navigate that in order, so you can do a degree of, you can always do your cultural obligations. It's to the point of what's enough, right? If you want to do it to a place that's gonna really financially hurt you in a way that you can't pay your your mortgage or your rent, or or you have other duties that you need to do something else like school fees, don't do that. Just do enough that you show that you did contribute, you're doing your best, until you're 5 years later on, or like when your kids are in a position to help you out and they're working and stuff, to kind of do what you want to do to make it, like I'm talking about, if somebody you want to give $100, that's what you want to do today. But if you only can give $60, that should be enough. Or to
Mm,
do, get a ticket to go somewhere else. If you can't get a ticket to take you and some other people, just get a ticket to take your son to send to represent your family. You know what I mean? It's all about managing, and that what's hard is because Polynesians want to give their best, right?
yeah.
And then when they give their best, it can really hurt you later on, because now you understand I can't do everything, and you actually probably won't be able to fulfill your family duties within your own family because you're doing your best for everything. And we're all humans, we're not robots. Maybe we can do it in a certain time of your age, but you get older every year. It's just all about managing. But I think there's a lot more cultural duties that really helps you, because one, your cultural duties helps you remember who you are and where you came from and what your
Mhm.
families have kind of sacrificed to get you at. And if you don't do any cultural duties, for me, this is just me personally, you then you become lost in trying to figure out the Western way of how to navigate. And sometimes that's a lot involves a lot of stuff that can really put you in a in a rabbit hole. But
No,
yeah,
and
that's
that's
just my
and
thought.
that's no, I and that's an interesting thing, because when you listen to Jordan Peterson, he says, you know what's worse than having too much responsibility? Having zero,
Mm,
right? And so I think that's what you're kind of alluding to, Mussy, is if you totally disengage from the cultural responsibility, it is worse than almost engaging in too much. But you know what's better is engaging in a wise way, right? Where you say,
yeah.
"Whakapoto poto." I think Javier or someone here mentioned, you know, the fua e fatongia, but do it in a wise way.
Yeah.
Don't just say, "Oh, absolutely no," but engage the way you can. Um,
Mm,
Clive Moore, enough for a palang is not enough for a Tongan, and that's
mm,
the pressure. That's the pressure from the cultural side, especially when the leadership within the family, they think that what you're giving is not enough.
mm,
Hey, that's where communication back and forth. We can try and leverage the best of both worlds,
mm,
where we engage on our cultural responsibilities on the top down communication, but also encourage some bottom up communication to just kind of say, hey, do you want some help or no help? But this is what I can bring to the table. I don't know.
Mm.
That's
No,
the
Tua.
2 cents there.
I was gonna mention. Did you watch that Tongan true based on a true story that Red, White, and Brass? Did you watch that Tongan
No,
movie?
no, I haven't been able to see it. The one
If
with
you do have a chance,
yeah,
yes, true story. It was a good example of the father always setting it, and then what helped to make the 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 kids to listen from the children up was the wife played a big role. Says, hey, we need to listen what the kids want, and was able to help the kids to kind of fulfill their dream. And it's a true story. So for those who haven't watched Red, White, and Brass, it's an awesome Tongan patriotic movie. It's a good movie to
yeah.
watch with your families and stuff. So it was a good illustration of that family navigating because he was a Faifekau. He always told the kids, no, don't do this, be conservative when you play your music at the halftime at the World Cup and do this, do that. And then he was feeling pressure from the president of the church. But when it came to the end, the wife said, kids been following to do what everything you said. Let's just for this one chance let the kids do what they want, and they were able to really did a good job in their performance at the halftime. But yeah, it's a good story too. I mean, that movie really depicts of what every Tongan family do when they're living overseas to navigate this unique culture of the Western and the Tongan culture. So
Okay. Let me see if I can copy this. I might have to pull it up on Facebook, but it looks like Javier suggested a video. I'm going to have to pull it up. Looks like Javier is on Facebook. So I'm going to go to our Facebook page here real quick and put it up. But while I'm doing that, I wanted to express an idea, and I wanted to see what the group's thought here was.
mm,
Um Hey, Javier, is that comment straight on the Polynesian Eyes link on Facebook page, or is that my personal one, just so I can try and find it, or on Tevita H. Fale's a broadcast there? But the idea was this, Masi. I was thinking about this the other day.
mm,
This is why it's really important for us to have these conversations about our history and how, especially, there's a very interesting dynamic between Tevita H. Fales one. Okay, I'll look it up on his page so I can copy and paste that comment.
mm.
The okay, opening new tab. Okay, I got it. Oh, is this the Fahu? Okay, let me pause that. Um, this is why it's important to have that conversation, or really, as we talk about how, and when we say Tonga, yes, we're speaking specifically of Tonga, but in many ways, Tonga is the accumulation of the Polynesian Empire's knowledge, bank, and
Mm,
experience of the empire. So when I say Tonga, I'm also kind of indirectly referring to all of Polynesia, on how Tonga was able to navigate colonization. And it's the same thing that we're talking about, the social navigating of the Western world and our Tongan culture and history, is to observe how Tupou the First, Laufiri Tonga, people like
mm,
Shirley Baker, and
mm,
how our ancestors were able to navigate that transition. Because in many ways, we're talking about the same thing, but in our families and in our
yes,
communities, right?
smaller scale. Yes.
Yes. And so this is the value of kind of understanding where we come from,
Mm,
and our family history and our political and social history, because you have the traditional power setting, the Tuitonga with Laufiri Tonga. Then you also have the future leadership and this new way of approaching leadership with Tupou the First, who is still, in a way, he's a distant cousin of Laufiri Tonga, right?
mm,
He's not the heir to the traditional power in Tongan political and religious um, perspective, but he has a relationship to it. And then you also have technology, religion that are foreign, right?
mm,
And you have social things that are coming in, and so you're trying to navigate colonization, which is, and for all intents and purposes, we'll just call it Western culture. And it is foolish to just say we're going to ignore,
Mm,
right? If our ancestors just said, we're not going to pay attention to Captain Cook and the English and all those people, well, that's one of the quickest ways to get colonized, right?
correct.
And
Yeah.
or to fully reject it. Our ancestors looked at the problem and they were realistic. They said, we're not going to beat them militarily wise. We cannot just ignore them. We have to look at the problem and be honest with the challenge in front of us.
Yeah.
It's coming, right?
Yeah.
Western influence is coming. How do we leverage that to preserve our culture, our political, all those things
Our way of
that
life,
we
the
have, our
Tongan,
way
yes,
of life?
Our
Exactly.
Polynesian way of life. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's literally what Tupo the First and Laufiritonga did. They
Mm,
guided us. And here's the interesting thing. Like we've mentioned, one of the discoveries of what we're discussing here is Laufiritonga realized that the Tuitonga was outdated. It was no longer the future. And this is the reason why. This is the idea that I was thinking of the other day.
mm-hmm.
The Tuitonga was in many ways viewed as a priest slash representative or intermediary between the people of Tonga and God, Hikuleo, right? And so that was the role of the Tuitonga for thousands of years.
Mm,
But now Laufiritonga has become a Christian. He's a Catholic now. He goes, that's not my job. That's Jesus's job, right? The new
mm,
religion that's come in, which in many ways is just the restoration of the old religion. So I'm wondering if Laufiritonga was like, my role, the traditional role of the Tuitonga is outdated, right? And
mm.
and we need to adjust to keep our people free. Then he looks to the side and he sees Tupo the First, who shows some significant talent, not just in war, but in navigating the Western kind of like scenery, the
Yes.
government and so forth. And Laufiri Tonga goes, it's time for me to end this Tuitonga line helped our people for thousands of years, but it's time that we embrace. I've embraced Christianity. Tupo the First has embraced Christianity. There's this new technology, this new culture that's coming. In order to survive, we have to adapt, apply what we can apply while preserving all the good that we've done and kept us as a people. I don't know.
Mm.
That's just some thoughts there. And then we'll jump into Javier's video here. But any thoughts on that, Masi?
No, no, I agree. I think out of all the leaders of that time, Tau Fahau, Tupo the First, he was very familiarized because I think he was also working with the Shirley Bakers, with
Mm-hmm.
a lot of guys who were foreigners. So he kind of understood how the foreigners worked, right? And this was going to be part, because even it is part of how we live now. He kind of saw that this was going to be part of the new way of how the world was going to be structured, because if it came to Tonga and the little islands, it was already in the other worlds. And he was able to navigate that because essentially he wanted to keep the Tongan way of life. And what is that Tongan way of life? In Tonga we still have our land, and Tonga can still be Tonga, like they always say, que Tonga pea Tonga. It's because of Tupo the First, and also Laufiri Tonga allowing it to happen. but uh
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, and just for some of the viewers who haven't listened, we've mentioned this on other episodes, but it is kind of our thought that Laufiri Tonga, he understood how vulnerable Tupo the First was, right? Because all Laufiri Tonga had to do was cause problems. He didn't even have to defeat or win anything. He just has to challenge Tupo the First, and England has an excuse to colonize Tonga, right?
Yeah,
To be like, hey, these savages,
we would have
they're
been
killing each
fractured. Yeah.
other. Exactly. Let's just bring them civilization. he understood that, so that's why he not only did not engage with Tupo the first to try to put pressure, but he actually solidified Tupo the first position, and that is expressed through the Taumafa Kava that he sets up. Nobody
Yes.
told Laufiri Tonga to do that. He goes out of his way to do two things: tell Tupo the first, I'm not going to continue this line. I'm going to self-end it. And number two, here's a Taumafa Kava for you and the future of
Yeah.
our people,
Yeah.
because he realized Tupo the first was going to carry it forward.
Yes. No, and just to add on to that, it was also to legitimize his authority to the Tongan people that he was the legit modern king of the new Tonga that was gonna
Mm,
be sprung up. Because I think we all know that Tuikan Pol, they were only Ilokawa and stuff. He Tupo the first had to be taught, or his advisors had to be taught of how to structure the Tauma Whakawa with the help of Laufiri Tonga. And because that was
yeah.
an illustration to all of Tonga, this guy is the legit leader of Tonga moving forward.
And like the comment that you made, Masi, on a couple episodes before, where we see the switch that Tupo the first does. Remember
Mm.
that, like the Tuikanu Kupolu was a voting system, right? And
Yes.
that's one of the things I know our Samoan brothers and sisters are always on us saying that we're disrespectful on the podcast because of this.
Mm.
We will give credit where credit is due. The Tuikanu Kupolu system for the youngest kingly line, it adopted a lot of the Samoan structure, and that kingly line was a voting system
Yes.
where they voted in who the next Tuikanukupolu would be. That was the opportunity for Tupo the first to
To get
get
in.
the power, to have the influence, but then he makes a switch for his descendants, right? He no longer says, hey, I know that Tuikanukupolu traditionally is a voting system, and
Mm.
I'm wondering if the Taumafakava is what solidified that. It was
Mm.
saying, hey, look, I have now have a Taumafakava. It's different. It's not the same as the old Tuikanugupolu.
Yeah.
So it justified, maybe, I don't know, it's just an idea that
Mm.
popped up, is maybe with Laufiri Tonga giving him a Taumafakava, kind of solidifying him as this is the kingly line that will lead us into the future, that empowered Tupo the first to say, hey, yeah, we're no longer gonna vote on the
Yeah.
Tuikanku Polo moving forward. It's gonna follow the Tuitonga and the Tuihatakalaua
Hmm.
process moving forward of father to son, father to son.
Correct.
And we
Correct. No,
think
that
we think Samoa for that idea.
yes, because Samoa, that is still the way it's done now with their titles. Every title,
Yeah.
every family has a has a voice on who they want, and you know when you're in that, and that I think that's what Taufahao Tupo the first did. He went around and gathered support, whether that be, hey, I'll support you in this if you vote for me to be the Tuigang Polo, and that things can be a little very, the democratic process can be very, very messy and long
Yeah.
term, but it's still good for that time. It was good for that because that's how Dupola first came. And even now, like I said, the Maria Toa title has been vacant since the death, and we're talking about, I don't know, it's been 20 years
And is
or
that
something.
because
So
just not enough people to vote for a title, or what's going on?
it's either split and they haven't, a majority hasn't hasn't come to the conclusion to pick somebody, so it just stays stagnant.
Mm,
So no one gets picked. But yeah, that is interesting that how that happened, and he was voted in, and that's, it's just funny. It's almost like a divine intervention too. Like, it's just crazy how certain things
it
had to happen.
is. And it's not enough to have a good idea. It's having a good idea and knowing when to exercise it at the right time, right?
Correct.
Because Tupo the first comes across it, he uses it at the right time, right, to get into power,
Mm.
but then doesn't use that idea moving forward. It served its purpose, and then now he goes, yeah, we're gonna go back to the Tuihatakalaua and the Tuitonga system of father to
Father
son,
to
father
son.
to son, father to son.
Mm.
But yeah, okay, interesting. That was a interesting
Mm.
discussion there. So thank you, Masi. So
Oh,
Javea here sent this, and it looks like it's Pilo Levu, and she's gonna have a conversation on the Fahu situation. And no, obviously the fahu to her family, right, and her kids
Yeah.
because she's the sister of the current king, and yeah,
Older sister of the current king. Yeah.
yeah.
Everybody has a file. There is one thing I'm going to tell you about this that I've discovered in the United States, which I don't think is such a good idea. Now, we can take this fahu business too much, and we go to great expense, and we show off a bit too much, and it's unnecessary. You're basically only meant to have one fahu. Say if your father has 10 sisters, right? You don't have to provide 10 different tiers, cakes, colors, all that. Just the eldest sister will do, okay? Or the eldest sister's child will do. We don't have to provide 10 of everything if your fathers have 10 sisters. I know that when we come to the States, everything is new to us and we want to do the best we can. Very often when you do the best you can, you do too much. And then you get into debt. Your parents get into debt because of this. And that's not good. And when you see your parents suffer and get into debt, then you don't respect our customs anymore. And that's wrong. We should only do what we can. If we have a big wedding, it's okay if we only have 200 people. We don't have to have 500 people at every family wedding we have, do we? So you go tell your parents that I told you. And if they want to know more about our culture, they can come and ask me.
Very good point. Any thoughts on that, Masi? Malo, Javier?
Yeah. No. I agree. I agree, and that is starting to be a talking point amongst the youth. I'm starting to pick up. They always think the cultural thing is unnecessary, doing your fatongia and stuff. But I don't think she brings up a good point. They've always just witnessed the negative side, and that's they haven't been around other Tongan families who kind of when you have the capacity, I don't mind you going all out. But if you don't, and it's a show off, unfortunately, only the internal people will really know what's going on. But don't just do whatever you get. And this is the thing, and this is what I talk about with a lot of the youth too. When your families make sacrifice to come overseas and they see their kids not making the right choices, a lot of them will think they probably didn't make the right move, because the whole point is, if your father came to overseas to kind of sacrifice, give a better life, your job is to also help the father or the family that's made that sacrifice, to help them with their fatongia. And that's the part. But the thing is, you got to progress. If you're just coming and then you're doing the same thing, there's really no progress to doing, really kind of increase the standard of living of your family. You always kind of think, what was the sacrifice for? But at the same time, it's like I said, when you do that migration, it's a lot of work, and I don't think people understand that it takes a lot of sacrifices to make that happen. But no, Pio Level is Princess Pio Level is right for the youth. The youth haven't seen things done properly, and that's unfortunate. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
And
negative thing.
and here's she makes a comment, and I'm gonna share a video here. Have you seen the video about Mike Tyson about being a great man versus a good man? It's interesting
No.
because that's what I think Pilo Levo is saying in that video that Javier shared, right? We all want to do our best, but sometimes we just need to do good. Eh? Because good, we all have a general understanding of what's good, or good enough, feunga, right? But when we say best, well, what's the best? Who's the best? Best ends up being, oh, well, they did this last time, so we have to do more and more. And best does not have a limit, right? It's a hyper competitive type of mentality. But being good is pretty simple. It's direct. What's good? Oh, a cake is good.
Mm,
We don't have to be the best. We don't have to have 50 cakes like Clyde Moore here say, you know.
yeah.
But Mike Tyson has this. Let me see. Hopefully, it doesn't have any language, and we try to minimize the language as much as we can to the viewers, and keep it PG-13. Um, but Mike Tyson here gives a good comment about how he always wanted to be great for a while, but now he doesn't want to be great anymore. He just wants to be good. And I think this is the video. But let's listen to it.
Junior said, I met a lot of great men, and all those great men I met, they were no good men. And he said, after meeting all these great men, I decided I want to be a good man. And that's what I said. I said, I want to be a good man. People told me I was great for a long time. As I got older, it didn't mean anything to me. And then I realized that being a good man worth more than being a great man.
Wow.
All great men are not good men. But most good men could become great men.
Yeah, it's true.
John Kennedy.
Very interesting. Eh? When you're a great man, you don't find a good man. Eh? They're not good men when they're great men, but good men can become great. And I think that's what she's kind of Pilolevo, and what we can learn maybe with how we apply our culture is the whole point of our culture is to do something good. Eh? But then when we get carried away with, and you see this sometimes in the fundraising for the high schools, right? Somebody drops 1,000. The next guy who only showed up with 1,000, he has to drive to the ATM because now he's going to give 2,000, right? Because why? He wants to be best, the best, the best, and the best has no limit. There's excess. But the whole point of our culture is to do good. Do good to your family, do good to your neighbor. I don't know, just the 2 cents on that.
No, good point. And Mike Tyson, he's a very unique story because he skipped the good to go great. Because man, he was one of the youngest champions ever, right?
Yeah.
To be
Youngest heavyweight
undisputed.
champion.
Yeah, so he's kind of like a Michael Jackson in a sense that he skipped a lot of steps. He was always great, 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 and I think he kind of skipped how to be good because when you're good, you can always become great. But he just went straight to great, and then now he's kind of understanding with his, that he's done with his famous life journey in boxing, understanding that being good is has more worth than being great. Eh?
Yeah. And I mean, we'll come back to Laufiri Tonga, we'll come back to Tupo the first. They were not trying to be quote unquote great. And I was just listening. Shoot. I was just listening to, and I don't think I have it on TikTok.
And Tua, and that's another thing
You had a
that
comment. Yeah, go ahead, Masi.
no, another thing I was thinking of that even when there's always going to be he or she says, when you give what you can, it's just being able to navigate and don't be so influenced when what people are saying about you. Just stick to your guns, do your best, and you should be comfortable. And just gotta you and your family gotta be the same because sometimes it can be an issue, especially if let's just say if the dad says we can only do this, but the mom wants to do something great and do all of this, do all of that, then there can be a little back and forth, and then the father
Some
gives in.
tension. Yeah.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, at the same time, you gotta do your best until you and your family are able to contribute more, and then you can do more. But don't be influenced what people say about you, what you contribute and what you do, because you can say to yourself, "This is the best I can do for now," and then you can always improve and do better. But
Yeah. Looks like there may be some drama on TikTok here that Nacho, you seem to know all the drama that's going on now. This is I seen drama on TikTok because a mom wanted to assign sisters to Fahu each brother's kids. Now the sisters fighting over Fahu. See, this is the kind of stuff where we're just not doing good, right? We want to do best. And when we're trying to do best, sometimes it kind of gets, but it comes from a good place, right? We want to give the best. But at the same time, we just need to know and what's whakapoto-poto. Excess is not whakapoto-poto. Excess is not wise. Good. That's why there's a lot of wisdom in good enough. Don't overshoot the mark, just hit the mark itself.
And that's the thing, Tua, when you get like certain leadership like a Ulmotua or like a Fahu and they let's just say they start telling, hey, shit. She meana o mai or what, you know what I mean? And that's tough. I I always say, yeah, it's easy said and done, but that's, that's some of that social pressure that people have to give a lot more. If what I'm saying, your ulmotua in your family and the fajo in your family is doesn't see your eye that you're doing your best and this is it, and then you get comments like that, then the other families kind of follow saying things like that. So, easy said than done, but I'm just saying it's one of those things. It's very difficult to navigate, but one of those things you just have to say this is the best I can do and just live with it. And then you work hard and be able to save more, you can do contribute more, but don't more too much to get to a point that you can't even take care of your own children and wife. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's the
No,
reality. Because
that's the
those are the two.
reality.
Those are the leadership usually in your family is the ulmotua and the fahu from the male
Yeah.
and female side.
No, 100%. And kind of like this mentioned, we have to guard the kids when when you're when you're ever in the situation, because we all have our unique opportunities where we're the leadership, whether it's now or in the future. That's the opportunity to set the precedence, right? And be very mindful when you're in the leadership position that you don't set the precedence for something like you said, Masi, right? Where
Mm,
you're just kind of pushing it maybe a little bit too much rather than just saying, hey, bring what you have and we'll make it work, right?
mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
I don't know. It's a lot, like you said, a lot easier said than done. Um, let's see here. You know, anything less than the best is a felony. Malo, Vanilla Ice. Yeah, that's why Vanilla Ice was a one-hit wonder.
Shh,
Too much best.
Mari. Tangata, uy, fay laulau mo niya. Wait a minute. There.
What a bears is
Mari,
on top of it.
Mari.
Ay. Interesting. No, but like Javier said to Nacho, send them the Pilo level. Maybe it's a good time for some, when you're in a company, things are kind of going crazy, then the CEO says, oh yeah, we need some training. We need to do some training. So Nacho, go put
Pause,
the Pilo
pause.
level video
Uh,
on
uh,
TikTok.
Everyone drop everything, some training, upskilling, and some tutorials that we just go
Mm.
through. Workshops.
Some workshops to get back to the basics. Tackling and blocking. Don't worry about the Hail Mary. Just
Yeah.
tackle and block. That's all we need. Malo, God love you. I seen how Fajo works. I reckon if every culture does it, the world would be a more better and respectful place. Just say, no, true. When it's done correctly, right? When it's done correctly, when it gets overdone, can be a challenge. But I agree. I think it allows everyone an opportunity to have someone to elevate and respect and to subject yourself to in a way in the social, and it also gives everyone who has from their mother's side to be put in a position of being recognized. So it's a
Yeah.
really interesting balancing feature in the Tongan social structure. So when it's done right, I agree, it's a beautiful thing.
No, and just to add to that, that's why that system is kind of pretty good. It usually works pretty well because usually the ulmotua and the fahu, if there's some family who can't really don't like what the ulmotua is kind of doing, they can kind of share with the fahu, and the fahu can kind of try to help to tailor it to work a different way, and then it can be even opposite. Sometimes the fahu is not doing anything. The ulmotua can also just suggest some things because that's the right kind
Advise.
of that's the
Yeah.
that's the right of telling your information to say, hey, the fahu has been a little bit too much or a little bit too thing with certain things, and usually the ulmotua because they kind of in a working companionship too. It kind of brings that balance because they usually those two figures are the ones who are kind of the critical social structure of a Tongan function or a Tongan family way of accomplishing a task. So, yeah, I mean, it's really good when they work in harmony. You see the best of what a Tongan kainga and family can do.
No, 100%. Oh yeah, we. Tapu au piko ia. Eh? Ang hafu ipu fonu, ipu fonu. I'm gonna give the whole Kava bowl to what a bears. We're not even gonna scoop it up. Ang epe fukumete kakato kakava kia water bears. Eh? What a wise man. Vanilla ice to hao siya namon ne fangki fu I idea poto. Ha mo lau kau tama. To everybody, should we just give water bears the whole kumete? Eh? Look at that. Marie.
It causes stress. Maria.
Not only is water bears wise, but he rhymes. Maria. So we do have a question here. So it says, question for Tuan Masi, what are mom's thought about the fahu system? I don't understand the question that exactly here, Nacho. Are you asking what are the mother's thoughts? Maybe just kind of clarify that question if you're able to, Nacho. I know you send there does, but it still is not clear to me. So maybe if you could rephrase that a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely a unique feature. Is the fahu system only found in Tonga? Do you know the answer to that, Masi?
Pretty much. I mean, I haven't really lived in the other Polynesian states, but Samoa doesn't really have anything. They do allow females to hold certain titles too, but not certain villages. It's only a male thing that holds titles, but there's some villages who allow females to hold maybe lesser titles, but they're still chief titles. So, but nothing like Tonga with the fahu system. I think that's only a thing within Tonga. Maybe they did do it back in the days, but with the whole colonization, things were lost.
Yeah.
But Tonga was able to maintain that because of the structure. Tonga really valued that, and that was really saved. So, yeah.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. Malo, everyone. We're coming to the end. Masi, any closing thoughts? Anything you want to share?
No, appreciate everyone's interaction. Malo, this is just a discussion, just trying to know more about our history. Thank you, Tua, for driving this. You're the reason why we have this. I appreciate everything you do, and yeah, that's about it. Appreciate everyone's interaction. Wish everyone the best. We talked about some important things regarding the pressures and some of the holistic well-being of our people kind of overseas and probably in the islands, just be more positive and just be able to find a source of some positivity to maintain a positive perspective and good well-being, because life is only gonna get, unfortunately, harder, because that's how it is. Looks like every year brings with new technology. There's a new way to deal with it, good and bad. So we just have to be more capable people to try to navigate that, just like our ancestors navigating the Pacific Ocean. But no, malo everyone's participation tonight. Malo ofat.
Okay, Malo, Masi. With that being said, have a great evening, and until our next digital Kava session, stay safe. Peace.
Malo.